Hey everybody, and welcome back to Lagos Racing Network. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 biggest takeaways from the Austrian Grand Prix weekend, what we learned and what to look forward to for the rest of the season based on what we saw yesterday at the Sunday Grand Prix. If you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit a like on the video if you do enjoy it. But otherwise, let's get straight into it. So in at number one, and most importantly of all, we have the fact that Ferrari can beat the Red Bulls on pure pace. This has not happened this season. Obviously, last weekend at the Silverstone Grand Prix, we saw that they beat the Red Bulls, but obviously we had damage to Verstappen's Red Bull that massively cost him performance and obviously had him down fighting with Mick Schumacher in the end for positions. So this wasn't a pure fight on pace. Obviously, Perez had issues of his own, having to start from down the grid. And while Leclerc won the race, we didn't see evidence that they could beat Red Bull in a fair fight until today. So this is the first, until the Austrian Grand Prix. So this is the first time we've had sheer proof that Ferraris, it may be track dependent, but they can. And to do it on Red Bull's home turf as well was absolutely brilliant and a massive statement of intent going into the second half of the season, as we are now officially at the halfway stage. But we've finally seen that the Ferraris can beat Red Bull on pace alone with no issues to Verstappen's car whatsoever. Obviously, Verstappen was starting on pole as well, so had the advantage at the beginning of the race, but we saw Leclerc overtake Verstappen twice on pure pace. Red Bull did not have an answer, and I think that worked massively in Ferrari's favour because, as we've seen this season, Ferrari's tactics are not up to the standards of Red Bull's. So for them to just be able to put on a really simple strategy and purely beat them on pace was massive for Ferrari, and hopefully a sign of things to come for the rest of this season. And obviously I would assume that Red Bull are going to be looking at it, seeing what it is about their car that, you know, cost them the performance versus Ferraris around the Red Bull ring specifically. They'll be reviewing if they feel like there's any other circuits in the second half of the season that are going to have same characteristics and going to lend themselves to Ferrari, and if it's something they need to worry about, maybe to bring some upgrades to fix their car as we go into the next few races. But for us, the fans, to see fully that the Ferraris can compete with Red Bulls on pure pace was absolutely fantastic, and hopefully a sign that in the second half of the season they can bridge that gap in the championship, and maybe we can hope for a title fight after all, but we will see. In at number two, we have the fact that wheel-to-wheel racing is here to stay in Formula One. We saw some absolutely fantastic overtakes and fighting, especially in the midfield. Obviously, we had the overtakes at the front between Leclerc and Verstappen, but majority in that midfield battle, we saw the McLarens, the Alpines, the Haas, all fighting between each other. We saw the Alfa Romeos getting involved. We saw 5 wide overtakes nearly at points going up into the into turn 3. We had 3 wide overtakes into turn 1. It was awesome, and it's obviously continuation. We did have a bit of a lull in the season where we didn't seem to get the excitement during race days as we did at the beginning of the year, but as Austria has shown fundamentally that these cars will deliver better action than we have seen in absolute years, some could argue decades, with these brand new cars and regulations. And I'm so happy to see it. It's so good to see these drivers doing what they do best, doing what they've been doing since they were kids, and learning to do was the art of the fight, the art of the overtake, the art of to race, not just go around and put in quick laps, but to race the people around you and actually get the best of the machinery that you have at your disposal. Something we've seen, you know, the likes of Norris as an example do really, really well. Something Bottas is doing really, really well on the Alfa Romeo. Something Mick Schumacher has suddenly started to do in the Haas. So really happy for him to, you know, to get points 2 weekends in a row after not scoring at all in the Haas is absolutely brilliant. And he got driver of the day. And we start to see some of that temperament from Mick of his dad. So absolutely love that. So long may that continue, because if he can continue his improvement in form, he's certainly going to be someone to look out for in the future. But just on the whole, the overtakes we've been seeing, especially at the Austrian Grand Prix, I think have been an absolute joy to watch. And as an F1 fan, I'm sure all of you would agree, it's just so good for the sport. You know, it's everyone wants to look out for, you know, who's winning the championships, and that's what gets the headlines. But I think fundamentally what's most important is having something fun and exciting to watch through a Grand Prix. You know, we've had far too many people over the years, you know, the casual fans who kind of just watch the beginning, flutter through the race, and then will pick up to see who won at the end. But I think with these new cars and regulations, we're going to get so many more people fully invested and interested in what happens during the race, just because of the pure excitement factor, seeing the cars so close together, the overtaking, you know, the last ditch on the brake moves that we're seeing, and then the switchbacks and the people fighting to get back on the next DRS zone, and it isn't just one person goes past, they get away, and that's it. There's ongoing fights through the whole course of the race and the season, and obviously track dependent, it's changing up what cars are where. You know, we've seen the Hasses just flailing around at the back fighting the Williams at one circuit, and then the next week they're 5th, 6th and fighting, you know, the McLarens and the Alpines for head of the midfield. So that's brilliant too, the fact that, you know, what we get every weekend seems to change depending on the track with the midfield fights, but what doesn't change is how close they're getting, how brilliant the fighting is, and the drastic improvement we're seeing. And I was a bit worried after a bit of a lull in the middle of the season. I think that as the teams were upgrading, I was worried that maybe they were going to find ways to fine-tune the cars that were actually going to reduce their ability to fight so close. But I'm happy Austria's happened, and it's absolutely brilliant takeaway that we've still got this brilliant close wheel-to-wheel racing to look forward to for the rest of the season. In at number 3, we have the fact that Mercedes are halfway there. So we've seen that obviously at the beginning of the season, all the issues Mercedes had in terms of taking their fight to the front, they were sort of down and around the midfield, you know, fighting McLaren for the head of the midfield. But now they are firmly, and we've seen it over the last couple of races, that they're definitely, you know, pushing to be that third place team. But they are absolutely getting closer and closer to the front too. But I think with Silverstone, we start to have that glimmer of hope that they might be ready to fight those front two. But I think Austria's kind of brought them back down to earth a bit. It is going to be track dependent. There might be a couple of Grand Prix where they can just about get to those front two and be ready to pounce on any opportunities. But I think Austria's shown that, generally speaking, the expectation for Mercedes, at least for now, is that they will be firmly third, ready to take podiums, as we've seen with Hamilton and Russell, that if anything happens to the reliability struck Ferraris or Red Bulls, or incidents happening between those cars, they'll be there ready and waiting to take up those positions when the ones ahead of them fail. But assuming everyone finishes, they're going to be there, the third best team, consistently getting points, really reliable. We haven't had the reliability issues with the Mercedes. You know, it seems to be pretty bulletproof compared to the Ferraris especially. So that's definitely helping them with their points total through the season. But they have a long way to go, and I think that's the biggest takeaway. They've got a long way to go. Definitely more upgrades needed. We know there's fundamentally a really good car there with the Mercedes, and when they unlock the potential of it, I think they're going to be hard to beat. Not just them taking the fight, but I think when they unlock the potential of that car, fundamentally it looks really strong. Especially next season, I think they could be building up this year, getting the upgrades, understanding the regulations in the car, and if they get themselves back to the front, I think it could be really dangerous that we end up in another situation where Mercedes kind of run away with it again. Hopefully that isn't the case. Hopefully, obviously, Ferrari and Red Bull can maintain their momentum and we do see a legitimate three-way fight. I'd also like to see another of the midfield cars push up. Personally, I'd like to see McLaren, the sleeping giant of the sport, get back to the top and maybe even see a four-way fight for that front spot in the sport, where we see different drivers from different teams winning on a weekly basis. That is the ideal scenario. But for now, let's look forward to the fact that we could have three teams fighting at the front. Hamilton, Russell up there with the Ferraris and Red Bulls fighting for wins and podiums would be fantastic. But as I say, I think the biggest takeaway is that we're going to be waiting probably till next season for that to happen consistently. And for the rest of this season, it's going to be track dependent. There may be a couple of circuits they can fight the front for, but mainly speaking, they're going to be firmly third and ready to pick up additional podiums and points where they can, dependent on what happens with the Ferrari and Red Bulls. In at number 4, we have Constructors Champions Red Bull already confirmed. I personally think that when you look at the reliability issues Ferrari are having, we could see Sainz and Leclerc suddenly start winning races individually and push themselves maybe in the fight for the Drivers' Championship. But generally speaking, I think it's going to be one or the other. I think they're obviously going to have to push Leclerc. He's obviously, I think considered the number one driver. I'd love to see Sainz be able to push that fight, but I don't think that Ferrari have the reliability to do that. And I think that's where this lies. I think the takeaway from the Austrian Grand Prix, and we've seen it in previous races, is that they will not have the sustained reliability in that Ferrari to take the fight to Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes, while they have the reliability, do not have the performance to take the fight to Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. So I think the long-awaited, the long wait that Red Bull have had for their next constructors is over. They're going to nail that down this season. I can't see that changing. I certainly do think there is a fight for that drivers' championship. We've seen, even with Max last season, that you don't have to win the constructors to get a driver to the championship. And I'm not saying that hope is lost when it comes to someone competing with Max from a different team for the drivers' championship, but I think that reliability for the Ferrari means that they cannot compete over the course of the season unless something magic happens to Red Bull and they start having loads of issues. As things stand, Ferrari can't compete due to reliability, and Mercedes can't compete over the course of the season due to performance. So I think at this point it's locked in. Red Bull will be winning the Constructors' Championship this season. Finally, in at number 5, we have the midfield battle to go down to the wire. This is just, for me, the most exciting part of F1 at the moment. We've just seen Alpine have a fantastic race and actually catch McLaren on points. So they're now joint fourth with McLaren. And we've also seen Haas have a fantastic weekend. So they're doing really well. And could they improve? They're due a whole load of upgrades during the summer break, so they could come back stronger if those upgrades work on the Haas. And the improvement we've already seen with their car, granted, again, track dependent, if they can upgrade and have successful upgrades on that Haas, you have to assume that they're going to be a proper force for the rest of the season to come. I think McLaren's sort of issue is going to be Ricciardo. Can he start to score points along with Norris? You look at Norris's points haul versus Ricciardo's. If Ricciardo was anywhere near Norris, then they would absolutely have a massive points haul. Whereas I think you look at the performances of Alonso and Ocon, they're a bit more on par. Obviously Alonso leading the way, but they are a bit more on par. Same with the Haas now, with Schumacher having picked up his game. You think that Magnussen and Schumacher's points haul through the rest of the season will probably be on par. Haas obviously a bit far behind in the title fight in the championship fight at the moment, but with the way that they're improving, if those upgrades come off, you have to think they could build up some points pretty quickly and could, by the end of the season, really be in that battle for best of the rest behind Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari. So let's see how that plays out. But not only in terms of the points haul for the championship, but just the race to race fighting we're going to see on the track. I just hope that it carries on as we've just seen in Austria, and I do think that we've seen it will be different teams on different races. I think Alfa Romeo, track dependent, can be definitely fighting at the front. We've seen Bottas at the beginning of the season have some brilliant races. Guan Yu Zhou upping his game, he's had some good performances, and if they can get some upgrades, they could get back in that fight. I think Williams are the outlier. I know they're doing really well, sort of fighting around that 10th place. Albon especially driving that car really well this season and getting the most out of the car, I think. But I don't think they're ready to compete at the top of the midfield. Same with Aston Martin. I think that there's a good car there. I think Vettel is obviously there in the team. If they give him the car, he'll get it to perform, hopefully. But I don't think they're going to get there this season. I think maybe it's going to turn into a project for the next 1-2 years for them to progress up the midfield. But the Alpine, McLaren and Haas fight for the rest of the year, I think it's going to go down to the wire. I think it's going to be really exciting. I think other cars, if they get in that fight and make it exciting race to race, that's brilliant. But those three teams especially, just enjoy the fight you see. Hopefully they get good TV time, because the racing we've seen between them, especially in Austria, was absolutely brilliant. And I'm looking forward to more of that as the season progresses. So another brilliant takeaway from the Austrian Grand Prix. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit a like if you did enjoy the content. Let me know in the comments below what your takeaways from the race were. Do you agree with what I've said, the fact that Red Bull are going to be winning the Constructors' Championship this season? Or do you think that Ferrari can get their reliabilities under control and they could be a factor in that title fight? Or maybe even you think Mercedes, summer break, loads of performance upgrades, they're going to come back and they're going to be heading the pack? Let me know what you think in the comments below, or on any other things that I've raised on the video. But otherwise, guys, I'm just going to thank you so much for watching the video today. I hope you have a great day. Goodbye.